good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good zero dark stupid to those who are on the other side of the world in Oceania. Jeff told me there are 3,000 participants at any time, representing 30 countries. So welcome. My name's Peter Collins. I'm an associate professor with the Division of Forensic Psychiatry, Faculty of Medicine at the University of Toronto, but over the past 30 years, 25 of them with the Ontario Provincial Police, I'm an operational forensic psychiatrist. Each speaker is going to get 15 minutes, and without further ado, I'm going to introduce Dr. Hesketh, Ian, who is from the UK. He'll explain Oscar Kilo, and he's with the National Police Wellbeing Service in the UK. Ian, please.
Hi everyone. Hopefully you can see that. Has that screen come up now, Peter? Yes.
Yes, it's brilliant.
Right. Okay. Hi everybody. My name's Ian Hesketh, and as introduced, I'm the SRO for the National Police Wellbeing Service in the UK. I'll rush through this presentation. I doubt I will get to finish it, but I'll try as much as I can. I'm going to talk about a few things that we're doing over in the UK on Oscar Kilo at the College of Policing around implementing resilience programs and the programs in the UK. It's absolutely sensational to be on such a panel where people that you've cited through all your research life are actually within the same symposium. So huge congratulations to Jeff for that. So without further ado, I'll talk about our work here. So the National Police Wellbeing Service is unique in the UK, and it's specifically designed to meet the needs of policing in the UK. So although everything that we have has a generic purpose, we also actually specify that it should be for emergency service workers, and particularly the work that we do here is around policing. So the key takeaways that I would say in terms of well-being are these three things in front of you now. That is the environment, the working environment, leadership, and of course resilience. We've had many great minds on here already telling us all about resilience. So what I'm going to do is to move swiftly on to what we're actually doing in terms of resilience. So what we have in the UK is a number of work streams, and you can see here that I've circled one of the main ones, which is around individual resilience. And also listening to other panelists, both yesterday and this morning, it seems that we are all on the correct lines with what we're talking about in terms of supporting colleagues, supporting our staff. And you'll see that our service offer here has many of the things that have already been mentioned. So virtual resilience workshops, the great work of Marty Seligman there. We've got frontline resilience training and lots of different things. And our objectives are to enhance the capability of officers and staff. And again, building on what's already been said today, that's improving their own resilience and of course, performance as well. What I want to actually talk about is a couple of the things that we're doing in terms of promoting resilience. And a lot of what has been said today, I don't really wish to repeat it, but support and enhance it. What I want to talk about, first of all, is this notion of rituals in work. So if we look at what we do at work, and I'll go on to caveat some of the impacts of COVID later on, in terms of work at the moment, we look at personalities involved with work. And one of the big things about resilience is around personalities and why does this really matter? So in terms of personalities, you'll find it easiest to deal with some personality types, and others that's quite natural. But it's also important to know and understand your own personality and how that interacts with others, and use your knowledge to maintain the executive function, especially when dealing with offenders in the workplace in terms of policing. The need for rituals when dealing with offenders, and I talked about offenders, but also generally work as well, is that it provides us a mechanism of creating boundaries between normal life and work. And that's really important in terms of resilience. So that we talked about that executive function before, and we know that these are quick and sometimes relatively easy to learn. that focus the attention, and as a number of speakers have said today, is about gaining power as they are used. So this notion that we learn and use and train for resilience as we train for any other physical health matter. So this notion that we can train resilience, that I know quite a few speakers have mentioned already. So in terms of the rituals we'll speak about here, we look at before we start work, which helps us to build and protect against the impact of work. We talk about during work, which helps us deal with the work in a way that reduces the likelihood of harm. And then after work, this is the notion of how we then detach from work and reconnect with our home life in terms of return to it. And that's not easy. And I'll come to that very shortly in terms of COVID. So before the work ritual, so these are the questions that you can ask yourself: is why am I doing this work? So in terms of well-being, we talk a lot about meaning and purpose. And it's really the purpose that we're looking for here, and what you need to achieve, the perspective, if you like, what's your current goal, the process, and what are my personal concerns. So there may be around family health, an argument you've had at home, or childcare issues as well. And are you actively thinking about your personal concerns? And if that is so, you need to really try to sort that out before you start work, if at all possible. And we know sometimes that's not always possible, but what we're trying to do is to consider these things before you start work to improve resilience. And then during work rituals, identify goals for the day, ensure competence. Do you know what you're doing? What can you do to be more successful? And do you reflect on your work with others? And then this notion of maintaining boundaries so there's no personal seepage. Are you experiencing any physical or emotional distress or fatigue? And if yes, what we suggest here is taking a break from the working area, if that is feasible to do so. And I caveat that with the fact that sometimes within policing, it's not feasible to do that, but if you possibly can, that's the way you can be dealing with it. In terms of offender focus, so the last slide was looking at work and working colleagues. So in terms of offenders, and dealing with offenders, we need to think about the offenders and what motivates them. What does he or she think about? What might be driving the behaviour? Are they extroverted? And again, looking at personality types that we discussed earlier. Are they practical? Are they fantasists? Are they emotional, rational and calculating? Do they have personality disorders or Asperger's? And are you able to maintain this notion of executive function? And if no, take some time to reflect on the offender's behaviour and talk to colleagues. And again, we'll look about this emotional distance notion within that conversation. And then after work, we've brought this down into 3 phases. So managing the end, have you finished everything? If not, write down what you've not finished. Phase 2, closing down, putting the tools back in the box, as we say, checking yourself physically, emotionally and socially before you move on. And then phase 3, of course, reconnecting back with family life or private life. So how did you start your day at home? What are you hoping to do when you get back home? And are you still thinking about work when I get home? So you can see this constant cycle that's going around with us here. In terms of COVID-19, I put these extra slides in because, of course, a lot of us now are having to work from home, so we're not actually going into the workplace. And this includes many police staff and many police officers who don't have frontline responsibilities or are shielding or isolating for one reason or another. So we put this extra piece in about working from home and personal resilience. So the previous slides are very much about going into the workplace where this is concerned with working from home. So what we're exploring here are the dangers of taking trauma-related work home. So as the slides there, exposure to distressing material in the home, and the COVID pandemic obviously has resulted in this type of work being taken on in certain circumstances. So what we're saying here is there is an increased risk of secondary trauma and compassion fatigue. So most people usually see their home as a safe place or a refuge for comfort and relaxation. But if homes are being used to deal with our work, we need to take it on to further considerations. So they're based on these four factors at the end there. So recognizing that harm can be caused by taking trauma-related work home, reviewing what should be done to reduce the risks, responding to the risks, and refreshing the review and learning from experiences. Secondary, recognizing the harm of taking trauma home. Again, working with distressed people and artifacts, it can cause anxiety, depression, compassion fatigue, simple and complex PTSD. And people working in these roles need to be empathetic. But here we explored the fact that empathy increases the risk of secondary trauma. Peer support and social bonding in teams increases resilience and reduces secondary trauma. But this support is less available while home working. So again, these considerations about what you don't have in the home place and taking traumatizing materials into the home can also be harmful for those exposed. It can also lead to disassociation displacement or the emotional discharge of distress and anger. So again, these are further considerations. And again, this slide looks at reviewing what should be done. So again, this is in terms of improving one's resilience. So individual assessments should cover practical risks. So other people that are in the home place, privacy in the setup of workstation. So where is that workstation? Bedroom, kitchen. In the world of Zoom, we've seen all sorts of backdrops to various people's bedrooms and offices and kitchen tables and things. But if there's lots of people in the workplace, there may be a need to share these workspaces. And if you're in policing, obviously then the security of data and things like that need to be taken into consideration. So as leaders, how do we monitor the home workers' trauma symptom levels? So there's examples here of psychological surveillance tools, for example, the UK Health and Safety Executive ones, and the availability of psychological or peer supervision to support the home worker. Again, that's really important.
Ian, I'm going to interrupt and give you the 2-minute warning sign. I misspoke. It's 12 minutes per speaker.
Thanks, Peter. Very kind of you. So I'll quickly run through these. So the health surveillance and duty of care. So this refers to the regular repeated collection, analysis, archiving, as it says there, based on that work. So the organisation, the responsible persons, design, surveillance programs, etc., etc. I noticed that one or two people are asking for these slides. They will be made available following the presentation, of course. And I'll finish off with this, which is our Emergency Services Trauma Intervention Programme, which is a study that we've done looking at all those things in response to trauma, PTSD, anxiety, depression, and really the purpose of this is to improve resilience. The findings of this were posted in this article in Frontiers in Psychology, and we were looking at different methods of providing early trauma. So my very last slide, I will finish on this one, which gives you a quick run through of what that involves, and it's actually a demobilizing, diffusing, and then a further follow-up with the emergency service trauma meeting that's where, and then the onward referral is explained on the right hand side there. So I guess, Peter, that gives me just about out of time. So I will end there and take any questions if you want to send them over the webinar chat. I will try to answer those as we can get round.
Fantastic, Ian. Great information, and the feedback has been incredible. People wanting the slides and saying what a great program that is. And it's unfortunate we only have a certain slot of time, but wonderful information. And the next speaker, Konstantinos, can we get you up? My dear friend and colleague, Konstantinos, Dr. Cons, as he's known as, sporting a COVID beard, which is growing. Konstantinos is presently with the New Jersey City University, and he's going to talk about the Power Institute and focus on the power philosophy. Over to you, Cons.
Thank you, Peter. Hi, everyone. I'm Konstantinos, like Peter said. Cops usually prefer to call me Dr. Kon or Dr. Kons. I'm presently a faculty member with the NJCU at the Department of Criminal Justice and registered psychologist, so I provide clinical services to first responders and criminal justice populations. I recently completed my appointment with the Yale School of Medicine as a postdoc scholar. And over the last years, I've been working, doing research work and clinical work with first responders. And my work actually has been focusing on research on resilience, wellness, and health. Also, I was for about 15 years a uniformed officer. So over the last years, I've seen lots of suffering and at the same time lots of resilience coming from law enforcement officers. And that actually was one of the main factors that motivated me and encouraged me to focus on this kind of work. So today I'm going to give a brief outline and talk about the power of power, which is it's a work that actually started about 2 years ago. And the whole idea was that resilience or wellness cannot exist in a vacuum, meaning that they can't exist in isolation. And what happens is we develop a theoretical framework or a philosophy, what we call the power philosophy, that stands for police officer wellness, ethics, and resilience. And the whole idea is that resilience and wellness are intertwined with ethics and moral risks at work. So 2 years ago, we started working on the Power Book, which actually set up the foundational framework for this kind of philosophy. I've been having a wonderful collaboration with Dr. Daniel Blomberg. He's a clinical psychologist in California, and he's been working with police officers over the last 30 years, and he also teaches in California at Alliant University. And Dan and I actually supervised, or not supervised, but actually coordinated wonderful work of 20 plus exceptional scholars and authors who actually contributed in this kind of project. Our Power Book actually was published last year by Elsevier, and we were very honored to have the forewords written by Dr. Violante and Dr. Tracy Keys, who at that point was the Deputy Commissioner of the NYPD. For more information about more details about this kind of work, we also presented with at the last APA convention, the Police and Public Safety section, where we had a whole panel dedicated to the power philosophy. So the next step coming forward, it's the Power Manual, which is based on the power philosophy and framework. But what we've done actually, Dan, myself, and Dr. Schlosser, who is the director of the Police Academy in the state of Illinois, we recently actually completed the manual that is going to get published by the APA, the American Psychological Association, at the end of summer 2021. And what we do here is that we incorporate the power philosophy in more likely practical terms and strategies that can be applied to actual police work. So we have the presentation of wellness, resilience, and moral risks in policing, and we present that through the lenses of different domains. So we have the physical, cognitive, emotional, social, and moral, spiritual. And not only that, because traditionally, and as I talked to police officers over the last years, one of the issues was that psychology has a lot to offer, but they couldn't really realize the great value of it and how this kind of knowledge can benefit a lot the law enforcement work. So what we try to do, we try to transfer the psychological knowledge from actual theory and research to law enforcement terms. And we combine that with real police stories. So officers, when they go through that, they can actually identify and they would make sense of what they are looking for and what they experience and what strategies they need to apply to, so they can actually promote resilience and wellness. And we have this kind of step-by-step guide. So it's a groundbreaking work because we introduce actually this kind of philosophy from a holistic perspective. So stay tuned with that, and we are going to have it out there in the summer 2021. Towards this direction, we have established the Power, which is the non-profit public agency, which actually has two brands. We have one brand that focuses on research and public service, which we called actually the Power Institute, and the other brand that actually focuses on more likely training and consultation. So those are non-profit, and we actually dedicate our time and full effort to serve law enforcement officers, agencies, and provide our services and support. So far, we have established a number of collaborations with different PDs, primarily in the US, some agencies in Canada, as well as in Europe. So the extension of that, coming from Power and the whole kind of resilience work, and today I'm going to also present different kind of branches and how this actually work has extended over the last years. We have currently, and I think that is going to be very helpful for our audience, the special issue that was it's been actually in progress, but it's officially going to get published at the end of December 2020. And we have a number of wonderful authors and contributors that submitted their papers in this kind of special issue. So that focuses on trauma, loss, and resilience. And so far, we have about more than 80 authors and contributors who actually provided their work in our special issue. So this special issue actually is being coordinated by myself, Dr. Katie Kakmar, who is the police clinical psychologist and professor at the University of Toronto, Peter, and Mike Schlosser. And the next one, which I think it's going to be helpful for our audience, it's another special issue that we're currently having progress, which is actually in International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health, which also focuses on resilience and prevention in first responders. And that's another work with Dr. Kati Kakmar, Dr. Johnson, and Dr. Russo. Some current projects that I would like to share with you, and it's exciting because it's our next steps and what is coming forward. So we have our first project that is coming up recently, soon. It's with collaboration with Dr. Bonanno at Columbia and Dr. Tina Jekyll and Dr. Beloniel, which is who are professors at Walden, and they also teach in Sheriff's Department in Florida. So we're following a number of police officers longitudinally, and we're trying to explore and study actually trajectories of resilience and trauma over the years of service.
Hans, I'm going to have to give you a 1-minute warning. My apologies.
Absolutely, I'm almost done. And the next one is the SOS book, a great collaboration with Dr. Violanti, Dr. Pascarella, who was also a captain at NYPD, and Dr. Johnson. And we also explore coping, resilience, and suicide prevention amongst police. Actually, Dr. Johnson did an amazing work in helping us to collect the data. And the last one, moral risk is in policing, which is a great collaboration with Daniel Bloomberg and Tina Jekyll and Barbara Benoliel. And that's another collaboration with primarily with police departments in the state of Arizona and primarily southern states. So these are that's the progress so far. We are trying to focus on resilience, wellness, law enforcement. And I think, I'm pretty sure over the next years, things are going to come up with lots of exciting outcomes and contributions to the field. So thank you so much. If you have any questions or anything, feel free to contact me. These are my email addresses and my phone number. I'm always open to help agencies and officers to perform their duties, do their work, promote health, resilience, because I understand and I've seen so many years how important this work is and all these kind of contributions in our communities. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Cons. Important work. Everyone on this panel believes in evidence-based medicine and evidence-based policing, and the research is very, very important. So I'm going to turn it over to another friend, colleague, and I would say my mentor in the area of resilience, because I'm an operational guy, Judith Anderson, who is an associate professor with the Department of Psychology, University of Toronto at Mississauga, and has a cross appointment to the Faculty of Medicine at University of Toronto. And there's a lot more to everyone, all the panelists, CVs and qualifications. So please check it out on the website. Judith.
Thanks so much, Peter. Appreciate it. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
So we have an excellent and rich and well-rounded team across North America and
I'm gonna have to interrupt. Judith, I think you have a dictating apparatus on, unless we're getting subtitles.
Yes, this is subtitles from my PowerPoint. This for accessibility reasons. That's why I have it on. Okay,
my apologies.
Yep. So our entire team you can find on our website that I'll give you the citations for in a bit. But I'm really excited to be here to talk about tangible resilience. And this is really coming from a different perspective, more biological perspective. And what we mean by tangible resilience is actually physiological and physical techniques that people can do in the moment to improve their effective responses when they're working with people, when they're at home, when they're with their bosses or colleagues. And that these changes in physiology, psychology, the brain, they have to be sustainable and they have to be organizational wide. So as you can see here, and you've been talking about things, the speakers have been presenting this for the whole time. Officers are facing unprecedented times. So not only do they have their normal duties, but there is extreme public unrest right now and life and death health crises. So many officers are also struggling with organizational stressors, and we haven't really touched on that. I'm sure there's another speaker that will talk about that, but if they're experiencing bullying or harassment within the organization, as you don't have to be in one of these pictures to understand that that's actually a physical feeling. That takes away from your ability to be effective and work effectively and feel okay, right? So this is tangible unease and occupational strain. So how do we know that this has an effect on both performance and effectiveness? My lab and our collaborators have collected literally thousands of hours of behavioral, biological, physiological, neuroendocrine, and psychological data. And we've done this in North America and in Europe. And the story is always the same. The actual physical realities and psychological realities of the stress of policing affects performance and health. This is a wake-up call. Right now we have some of the highest suicide rates in law enforcement that we've ever had. We have physical health issues, early mortality and morbidity. And this is a reality. So we must be thinking about our interventions for resilience as actually addressing these, not just reading about it or telling people to do things, but how do we actually give people the skills so that they can change the way that their body works and processes stress. So we have a special issue. My colleagues and distinguished people from across the world have contributed to this Frontier special issue on de-escalating threat, the psychophysiology of police decision-making. So I'll refer you to that. I'll also refer you to the heartlab.net publications, where you can see all of our work demonstrating actual tangible performance detriments when we're under pressure and the acute and chronic stress has been building up. It's just a biological reality. It's not because people don't want to be effective, but when you have this strain on your body and you're in a conflictual or stressful situation, it's just the way that the brain works and the body works is that you sometimes do not hear or communicate effectively what you mean to be communicating. You miss situational awareness cues. Other people are experiencing the same stress and trauma, so they're not communicating effectively. And so you can see all these real, tangible, occupationally related detriments in performance as the stress levels increase. And obviously, officers can't always step away from their jobs, so they need something that they can do in the moment to modulate this and to build long-term reserves. So what can we do about that? Well, how we can actually modulate the body begins with the brain. And sometimes we forget about that. So because stress we experience in our body, like increased heart rate, breathing, those physiological symptoms, but actually this begins in the brain. And the stress response and strain works through the brain stem, and it actually can block these higher level cognitive processing. So if we're just teaching people cognitive techniques or reappraisal, or we're just telling them, yeah, take a break, calm down, engage in stress reduction activities. If we're just telling them that, we're not showing them how to do that or actually how to feel it in the moment, then it's not building reserves. And you'll still be dipping into both your short and long-term reserves. And that's a measurable thing. We can measure this through cardiovascular reactivity, neuroendocrine processes, as well as psychological detriments, right? So again, we need actual physical change. So there is positive outcomes. We've seen this through numerous research projects that we've done, again, across North America and Europe. We actually go in, we feel that it's really important. Our research team has seen the best effects when we actually go to the agency or the training institute or the academy, and we actually tailor this training for the officers, what they're facing in, with urban and rural threats, what is specific to their environment. And we train them in context. So beginning with any annual recertification training, in the field, in the car, in use of force, in their interactions with supervisors, and interactions with others, and interactions with the public. It's literally hands-on training so that a person, an officer, can actually experience it. They change their autonomic nervous system. They change their brain signaling. And so they can actually feel the difference. And their organization is supporting it. And that's what's a really key point. We can say, oh, I know what karate is because it's all about kicking and punching. Well, of course we know that sometimes we interpret stress like that. I know about stress and I know how to reduce it because it seems so intuitive. But you can think just as the same as knowing karate. Intuitively knowing what kicking and punching is not actually knowing what it is. Anyone who's done a sport like that knows they have to practice, mind-body practice in different contexts over time to really have this be embedded in your physiology and become an automatic response to stress when you're faced with these burdens. We've trained agencies all over, like I said, North America and Canada, and we've actually trained entire countries that have incorporated it into their training academies and push out these practices across all their agencies. And their effectiveness in use of force stats are some of the best in the world, as well as their public response. The public values them and police as extremely valuable public servants. So we also believe, and we've seen, that this type of training, this actual physical, holistic training, has to be throughout the organization. So you start with the recruits, you train individual officers, but also the administrators have to do it. So we can't just try to make the officers more resilient. You can only make someone so resilient, but you have to train the organization, change the language around how people talk. This should become a common language. They encourage each other. The administrators are held to the same standards of keeping up this similar environment. And then that's made into policy and teaching curriculum. And that is what the public is asking for. And the public is asking for this to be transparent. They want to know what you're being trained on. They want to know what to expect when a police comes to them. So the public is asking for dramatic change in police restructuring. So this is in line with resilience in both cases. So what we've done through our research program and our collaborations with police practitioners and police across the world is we've created a brain-body training. It's accredited through the Faculty of Medicine, and people get an accredited certificate for completing it. We go to services or training academies, and we completely embed this training. So the officers actually feel it. We have a train the trainers program. They know it, they feel it, and the administrators know it and feel it. And so it becomes the culture. Then we have created training materials, starting with a use of force model or a decision model. We don't like to stick with the use of force model, that has competencies on which you can train, which these brain-body training are embedded. This is all available on our website, and I'll give the links. And this is all based on a comprehensive research report that we did interviewing practitioners, hundreds of thousands of actually police officers around the world, and bringing together both the practitioner and the science behind de-escalation and use of force. So this is all through an evidence-based approach. So we have many more collaborators, but we have, this has been publicly funded through a number of research grants. And I welcome you to contact me and my collaborator, medical staff, Dr. Joseph Arpaia, who's working with some government agencies right now out west to potentially include this type of training when they're restructuring policing, because I know the public in a number of states are calling for complete restructuring of police training and police practices. So we do believe that there's a need for a paradigm shift in policing to incorporate actual techniques that people can learn in the moment. It's not just techniques, it's a holistic mind-body training. So if you can feel it, then you can, when you are faced with stress, you know you have the skills. It's not a cognitive thing, it's an actual body thing. You have the skills to, in the moment, modulate your stress response. And then there's other approaches in which you can quickly rebuild those reserves. If you don't have time to step away, if you don't have time to take a nap, if you don't have time, if you're having insomnia or fatigue or other pressures. So all of this information, again, is shared on our website, heartlab.net. The slides will be shared. I encourage you to check it out, and happy to have conversations. I will say we really are interested in working with services that are really interested in making complete change, because we've worked with some services who talked about wanting to do evidence-based change. And when they instituted a program, it was more of a checkbox. We've done our resilience training and we've done this evidence-based program, but they didn't train the administration. It didn't go beyond use of force, even though they are advertising that it did. Of course, the outcomes don't change, right? Compare that to countries that have instituted these across the organization, and the outcomes are objective and measurable. So we encourage you, if you want this change, we're happy to work with agencies to have a fundamental restructuring. And we've had excellent responses from the actual officers too, saying, this is something tangible I can do in the moment. I know how to do it, I feel it. And I can see, the tools that we use our windows
Judith,
into the person's.
I'm going to have to give you your 20-second warning.
Okay. So it's very widely accepted by officers. Anyway, that's my my presentation. Thank you so much.
Dr. Anderson, fantastic. I'm familiar with your work, and it's true what you're saying, and it's I've seen it in situ, and it's again the Heart Lab and iPrep is wonderful. Before I turn to Kim Janssen in the Netherlands, after her presentation, I'm supposed to give a overview, but instead of doing that, I would like each panelist to consider giving one take-home point before, instead of hearing from me. So we'll start with Ian, if that's okay, after we hear from Kim, who's from the University of Tilburg in the Netherlands, and she's going to speak about her research about, resilience in police officers and an overview of used concepts. And why am I saying this? There's the title page. Kim, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, hello everyone. Thank you for the opportunity today to tell you more about our study of the concept of resilience in the police literature. Well, my name is Kim Janssens and I'm a PhD student at Transo, Tilburg University in the Netherlands. And in 2016 and 2017, I was a junior researcher at Tilburg University and the Dutch Police Academy. During this year, I conducted a systematic literature review on the concept of resilience and the related terms hardiness and psychological capital. And for this review, I had a closer look at the concepts, measures, and predictive values of resilience, hardiness, and psychological capital in police studies. Today, I will tell you more about these concepts and the findings of this review, and I will discuss how this concept best can be used in the future. Well, as we all know, police officers have to cope with a lot of challenging situations during their work. And these challenging situations are caused by operational stressors, but can also be caused by organizational stressors, or for example, work-private life conflicts. And police officers are working in long shifts and have to deal with threats of violence and lack of public support, and all these stressors can create chronic stress or mental health problems. And also the sudden COVID-19 pandemic has an impact on everyone in the general population. But as police officers are the ones that have to act as first responders, they have an increased risk for stress due to prolonged threat of virus exposure and dissatisfaction among citizens because of the social distancing policies. And also other movements and demonstrations in societies worldwide have an impact on the situations police officers are facing nowadays. Police officers suffer more from mental health problems than the general population even before dealing with this added pandemic and societal challenges, stress and uncertainty. And subsequently, these mental health problems may have influences on the level of functioning and productivity of police officers. Well, in the past decades, resilience, hardiness and psychological capital have gained growing attention and popularity in all kinds of research areas, and also in the police literature. And we want police officers to stay healthy, both physically and mentally. And we want police officers to function well at all times and to be able to deal with challenging situations they experience all the time. But what is resilience? And what are related concepts as hardiness and psychological capital? As we will see later, it is noticeable that resilience is used and applied in very different ways. And within the police literature, there was not yet a literature review in this area that has examined the use of resilience and these similar concepts such as hardiness and psychological capital. However, in order to be able to conduct reliable research in the area of resilience, it is important that these concepts are understood the same way everywhere and that they are used in the same way everywhere. Because what exactly do you measure with concepts as resilience, hardiness, and psychological capital? And what is the predictive value of these concepts on the outcomes it is measured with? When we have a look at the definitions of resilience, hardiness, and psychological capital, we see on this slide that many different definitions for these concepts are used. So to start with resilience, Well, resilience is seen as an absence of PTSD symptoms, but also, for example, as the capacity to bounce back after adversity. A study by Gupta et al. Indicates that resilience is both about coping well with challenging situations and maintaining mentally healthy. Resilient employees bounce back from circumstances that involve risk. According to Wagner and Young, resilience moderates the negative effects of stress and promotes adjustment to circumstances. Higher levels of resilience make the individual less vulnerable to burnout. Hardiness is seen as a psychological skill or personality style, which consists of the concepts commitment, control, and challenge. Tang and Hammondtree refer in their study to Kobasa to define hardiness. Kobasa proposed hardiness as a resistance resource. The three crucial dimensions for hardiness are commitment, control, and challenge. And for hardy individuals, the stresses or life events are interpreted in such a way that the events are placed in a meaningful context and seen as controllable, challenging, and less alienating. And finally, psychological capital is seen as the capability to bounce back after problems and adversity, and is seen as a combination of self-efficacy, optimism, hope, and resilience. And Liu et al. Defines psychological capital as psychological capital are positive state-like psychological capacities and focuses on people's strength and how they grow and thrive. With the development of positive psychology, psychological capital has become an important internal research for positive work behaviors, job attitudes, and employee performance. Well, as we have seen on these slides, there are many different definitions and thoughts about these concepts. And it even becomes more complicated when we have a look at the measures and predictive values of these concepts. Well, because resilience consists of so many different definitions and variations of definitions, we also see a variety of measurements that are used to measure resilience. We investigated how resilience was formulated and which instruments were used to measure resilience, hardiness, and psychological capital. And to start with the right column of this table, we see that psychological capital was measured uniformly with the psychological capital questionnaire, or a variant of this questionnaire. And in the middle, we see that hardiness was measured with a broader variety of questionnaires. However, most of these questionnaires were specifically designed to measure hardiness, such as the hardiness scale or the short hardiness scale. And resilience is the most striking in this table. Some studies used a questionnaire to specifically measure resilience, such as the resilience scale. However, there were also studies that conceptualized resilience, for example, as the concept self-esteem and social support, or for example, as the concepts personality, world assumption, social support, and social functioning, and subsequently measured these concepts as resilience. And with this diversity of definitions and measures of resilience, hardiness, and psychological capital, the next question is, what exactly is the predictive value of these concepts? And when we look at this, it is first of all striking that resilience, hardiness, and psychological capital are measured in relation to many different factors. And as we can see in this figure, it is investigated especially in relation to mental and physical health problems, but also in relation to job satisfaction and personality. And how good is resilience at predicting mental or physical health? Well, in the majority of the studies, only weak to moderate associations between resilience, hardiness, or psychological capital and mental or physical health were found. And also the relationship between resilience and job satisfaction or personality were weak to moderate. Well, the variety in definitions, conceptualizations, and measurements may hinder conclusions about potential predictors and outcomes of resilience, because it's unclear to which extent different results are caused by, for example, different instruments or study populations. And in addition, it stands out that despite the descriptions and definitions of resilience refer to being able to cope successfully with difficult, stressful, or adverse events, and thereby leave space for the assessments of actual behavior of police officers, none of the studies that we identified assess to what extent police officers who are considered to be resilient actually perform better as a police officer than those who are considered not or less resilient. And besides that, none of these studies assessed how resilience actually enables police officers to keep carrying out their duties and responsibilities well during their work. In other words, studies on the predictive values of resilience seem to limit resilience in terms of mental or physical health, and thereby implicitly suggesting that as long as police officers do not suffer from mental health problems, they have the ability to deal with more or less stressful situations effectively in terms of law enforcement. So if resilience has less predictive values on both health and job performance of police officers, what can we do with the concepts of resilience? And especially in these times, it's important to know whether police officers can do their job well and whether they remain physically and mentally healthy. Can we use concepts like resilience, hardiness, and psychological capital in future research? Well, in our literature review, we saw that resilience, hardiness, and psychological capital implicitly were associated with good mental health. However, is a healthy police officer really a good police officer? Is a healthy doctor a good doctor? Or a healthy teacher a good teacher? You can question if resilience, hardiness, and psychological capital are important predictors for the functioning of police officers. And this review shows that the results of current studies do not provide strong and consistent evidence that resilience, hardiness, and psychological capital are important predictors for the functioning of police officers. And future longitudinal studies focusing on mental health and actual job performance are warranted.
Kim, 2 minutes.
Yeah, I'm at the end.
Brilliant, brilliant.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Very important observations. And Jeff has cautioned me to tell all the panelists a 1-minute takeaway because the cleaning staff have to come into the room and clean up for the next session.
Peter, let's make that maybe a 1 sentence or 1.5 sentences.
Okay, one sentence.
Thank you.
Okay, so Ian, a takeaway sentence.
Well, that's a tough one, Jeff, for me. But listen, things have changed with this nasty pandemic. So resilience, as we've said, is as much in the workplace, and for some of the workplaces now at home. So it's about taking that into context. Remember rituals, remember to look after each other, and that includes your family as well. And thanks for the opportunity, Jeff. Thank you.
Konstantinos.
Resilience not in isolation, and considering as it relates to wellness and moral risks and ethics, and openness and being alert to not rely on resilience in 1 or 2 techniques. So it needs to be something more thorough and more multi-dimensional. Thank you so much. And thank you to Jeff for the invitation and Peter for all this amazing work to coordinate this panel.
And Judith.
Thanks. I'll just put a plug in because we've heard sometimes when we go to different organizations, well, my organization has dinosaurs in it that don't want to train or rebuild or restructure training. So we have a case study. We have the administration from all of Finland got behind restructuring and rebuilding training. They're willing to talk to anybody who, even the director of the program, how he faced the naysayers in changing and making things more evidence-based. So we can put you in touch with them as well.
And last but not least, Kim.
Yeah, as I said earlier, I think it's important in future research to still ask the question if resilience really is an important predictor for the functioning of a police officer, and also to focus more on the mental health and actual job performance of police officers. Thank you very much.
Kim, Ian, Judith, Konstantinos, and especially Jeff, who was in the background but organized this whole thing. This is his brainchild, but it was great to see you all, albeit a virtual conference. It was wonderful to be a moderator for this because I didn't have to break up any fist fights. And go on the website. I should remind people that there will be these presentations available on YouTube, if I'm not mistaken, Jeff. And everyone, be safe out there, and feel free to contact any member of the panel, myself, Jeff, and we'll take it over to you, Jeff.